But let's begin. So, hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Academy Gaming Hour. Right now, we're on the road to DICE 2016, coming up February 16th to the 18th. And as we've been doing all week long, we've been interviewing and talking to DICE Awards nominees. And today, we're very fortunate to have Ted Everett from Squad. Hello, Ted.
Hey there. How's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm doing really well, thanks.
And so, Ted, first off, congratulations. Your team, which created a Kerbal Space Program, is up for two DICE Awards nominations. How do you guys feel? How do you guys feel about all the accolades you guys have received so far?
It's really amazing to see, and it's really awesome to be up for those two awards, especially the Sprite Award. Um, and overall, it's just been a fantastic experience, really.
No, it's great to hear. And I know this game has been made such an impact on, especially the Steam community and a lot of other people. Why do you think it resonated so well with people? And why do you think, people from Elon Musk to, people on NASA took so much care into the game?
Well, obviously, NASA and such people that work there love it because obviously it's all they don't get to do at work. But I think it resonates with people because it appeals to quite a core um, concept of just trial and error, of just having a bit of fun here and there and seeing what you can come up with. And obviously the creativeness really does like just allow people to mess around and do whatever they're feeling like in sandbox mode.
Hmm.
And I think career mode and such also give people a lot of satisfaction. There's a lot of self reward in that people put a lot of effort into achieving an objective, and they do, and it feels awesome, and they manage to do it themselves. I think that really does help.
And I should ask this first. For anyone that doesn't know what a Kerbal Space Program is for whatever reason, could you give a quick rundown of what the game is?
Yeah, sure. So it's a kind of like a multi-genre game that where you manage your own space program, and that ranges from kind of the more administrative stuff like hiring Kerbals for when your other ones are still lost in space
Mm.
or whatnot, and then you get to build the rockets, fly them, and put the rockets together in like Lego style, piece by piece,
Hmm.
um, and then land on other planets, explore other planets, make planes, make little rovers and such. It kind of it's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, for the Kerbal, like the mascot and the main character of the game, obviously, how did you guys come up with that concept, and what was the thoughts behind that?
Well, the Kerbals themselves, kind of like the concept of people, or not really people, but creatures that are along for the ride
Mm.
of a rocket, but they're not really piloting it themselves. That sort of concept was the lead developers from when he was a teenager and used to fire off rockets with little men made out of tinfoil.
Mm.
They used to attach them and see how far they could get, and kind of have little missions like that. And so years later, when he developed the game, it was that kind of inspired them a bit.
Mhm.
Um, he folded in that whatever the character that he'd come up with at that point into it, and so I say more visually as well. They were kind of quite a just they're the core concept of like the Kerbals is that they're kind of happy-go-lucky. Whatever happens, they're pretty happy, or they'll just go along with it.
Mm.
Um, and they just kind of seek fear almost and seek adrenaline. So we wanted them to be quite light-hearted and not as far away from humans as we could get, while still looking recognizably like anthropomorphic if they're not too kind of alien looking. And yeah, so because we obviously we didn't want humans in it in the game because suddenly it becomes quite serious when your ship crashes or you're stuck
Mm.
they're stuck out there. And it kind of just imagines it allows you to play with immersiveness a bit more.
Yeah, it feels like it's much more like whimsical because of the characters and
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
We wanted to kind of give a bit of roundness to what was quite a harsh simulator at the time, and kind of at that point we also, the more I'd say more like rather we at that point the game was quite so simple that the Kerbals really need to shine to kind of separate it from anything else like it.
Mm-mm. Got it, got it. I guess two more questions out of that is one is obviously the success of your Steam Early Access campaign. How did you guys experience, how was your experience with early access, and what do you suggest it for other developers?
I'd say early access is really it's a really great experience. The closeness it brings with your community is really irreplaceable, and Kerbal Space Program wouldn't be the game it is today without the community's help and all that they've done and all that they've suggested. And so I'd say that that alone really makes me want to be like, yeah, go for early access. Though I'd
Mm,
say it doesn't work for all games, and not all games you'd necessarily need to be as close to community, or wouldn't be like as great of a thing.
mm.
But I feel like for Kerbal, it really worked out.
And for Kerbal too, like the community was so integral in terms of the mods and in terms of, all the
Yeah,
creations. Can you describe some of the crazy creations you've seen, or maybe the greatest contributions you've seen?
I've seen people make massive battleships and things that just look, and they launch it all in one piece as well,
Mm,
and it's just insane to see because you kind of imagine like people build wild things, like big space stations. But when people come back with big battleships, you're like, wow. Or there's people that make back before we had stock shuttle parts. So
mm,
the Mark III size shuttle parts were a couple of updates ago they came out.
yeah.
So before that was out, people obviously wanted to launch stuff up in a shuttle style fashion, and there were a lot of people that wanted to do it stock without any the use of any mods. Um, and so what someone ended up doing was making an entire, essentially like a bearing out of the wheels and undocking parts and such to make shuttle bay doors, which was
Hmm.
pretty insane, and took them a long time, but it was amazing, and I was really really pleased with that.
That's crazy. In terms of like understanding how the customization works, how did the team decide like what to open up and how much freedom to give, I guess, players and modders?
Well, the game uh, from the start pretty much supported modding
Hmm.
in terms of adding parts and such. So that was always one because we always wanted people to be able to add any part they wanted and um, just kind of play around with that. But they didn't. It didn't allow plugins to be run.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it was about I think it was version 0.13, so about a year into development. The community sort of wanted it to happen, and a couple of people from the community did suggest and ways that we could do it, and someone came up with a way that would work, and so uh, they were brought onto the team and implemented it. And so it's pretty much we open up as much as we can these days because these days we develop with modding in mind.
Hmm.
But I'd say probably only in the last 2 years have we really um, developed with modding planned from the start of a feature. Because
Hmm.
previously, obviously, you're not quite sure if the modding is has taken off and is like you haven't seen the dividends of it yet, so you're not quite sure how much time to put in.
Hmm.
Um, but as we've seen, KSP's modding community is like unstoppable and like the amazing things they'll come up with. So
Hmm.
yeah, we give them all that we can pretty much these days.
That's an interesting comment, though, that you maybe in the very beginning you didn't know how much resources to put into modding itself.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I guess I don't know how long you've been gaming or you've been creating games, but how
Mm.
have you seen the evolution of games since your first interaction with games to now, and how that affected Kerbal in any ways?
Well, I'd say that the Kerbal's been at quite forefront of early access in terms of once it's arrived on Steam. Obviously, Minecraft had early access at least a few years before, and there are other games like Mountain Blade that did it about a decade before that. So I'd say that pretty much since we started, it's amazing to see the difference between Steam then and Steam now, because when we first released onto Steam, it was very much quite a closed doors or closed gated community, and
Mm-hmm.
there was quite as a developer, it can be quite a struggle to get onto Steam, especially if you're an indie developer with a product that's still in development. Um, and so, but now there's many. There's hundreds of games that are sitting on Steam these days, and in the early access section, and thousands overall. Uh, so I'd say to see that opened up is pretty awesome, and that's definitely changed. I think most significantly.
Mm. I guess another question I have is
Mm.
the type of game Kerbal is. I think over the past couple of years we've seen interesting building games, whether it's Minecraft or it's I can't think of the other name right now. It starts with a B.
Besiege.
Besiege, exactly.
Hmm.
Why do you think we're so fascinated with these things, these creation games, especially over the past couple of years, including Kerbal?
It's quite interesting. It's actually something I tend to think about a lot when playing KSP and just in general.
Mm,
Mainly because I think it does boil down to if you ever played with Lego when you're a kid,
Mm,
that was endless amounts of fun, and you're pretty much just limited by what you could do with the Lego. And so obviously in a game, there's very few limits, and the limits are what we put in the game essentially, uh, and what the limits of the computer and such. But I think that once people are given those tools and given the ability to do all these impressive and like insane things that they do,
mm.
uh, I think that's people just get really into the the creativity of it and kind of just doing such and such just for the hell of it to see what happens with strapping 20 boosters to the bottom of a rocket and seeing how hard you can get into orbit.
Um, I guess another question too is I know you're located in the UK. I know some
Mm,
members are in Mexico. It's a very
yeah.
international development community, correct? That you have.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, go for it.
Yeah. The we've got I think there's four of us in Europe,
Hmm.
and then there's about three people in America at the moment, and the rest are in Mexico. Uh, but yeah, so we're quite spread around, and the time zones definitely keep it interesting. But yeah, it works out really well.
I guess two things then. How did you guys come together from such,
Mm,
disparate places and, how that affected development for better or for worse?
mm. Um, so originally there was just the team in Mexico,
Hmm.
and that was three or four guys, including animation and like content design. Um, and so that then pretty much expanded by incorporating a couple of guys from the community in the early days that made really good mods, such as with Chad, who made the airplanes in the
Mm,
game. He initially made a mod for it where you could load in airplanes and have lots of fun with that. And that's before we had a space plane hangar or anything. So
mm,
considering that he'd done such an amazing thing and that we wanted it in the game, he was brought on board. Um, and then so slowly over time, that the sort of same thing happened. Community management was brought in from people that were currently in the community and moderating it.
mm,
Um, and so then that extended to me. I was currently working, helping them out with the QA just in my spare time,
mm, mm,
uh, just kind of running things in there because at that time it was mostly volunteers that were helping out QA in the game, just doing early builds and such. And so yeah, that was brought on board, and then pretty much the rest of everyone else is our modders that have been modding the game. We either really were impressed with their work or wanted the work in the game,
mm,
just in some form or another. Usually not as the mod is, but yeah. So they're brought on board, and that's kind of just how we became so international. And
mm,
I'd say in terms of how it affected development. It's once you have the stride you're going with people in different time zones. Once it's all kind of sorted through and everyone knows, um, the protocols. I guess it works really well. Just as well as you're kind of not. I'd say as well as if you're all sat in the same office because obviously, like Skype meetings can never be as good as face to face sometimes.
mm.
But it works surprisingly well, and it's always quite great to explain to everyone like kind of how it all came about as well.
That's cool. Uh, what is the future for Squad and for Kerbal? What's next?
Well, for KSP, we're really just pushing more and more updates out. Um, we're looking to kind of expand on the features that are there as opposed to adding more and more features in, though the next couple of updates should have some pretty cool stuff in.
Mm,
At the moment, we're upgrading the whole project to the newest version of Unity because it brings a lot of kind of a bit more stability in terms of performance. Allows us to do a couple of extra things that, in terms of kind of platforms that would be available on the like kind of Windows 64-bit builds, which allow people to load more mods and such. So we're really concentrating on that at the moment, and then obviously we're coming out on consoles um, in the future,
hmm.
and yeah, so it's quite a lot still in the future, and I think that's a great thing about being an early access game is that you have all this time um, with your community developing it, and then it doesn't stop there once you're finished,
That's
and you've
awesome.
already had all that great time, and now now you get to have some more.
Yeah, and KSP seems to be at the forefront again, like you said, of early access of all of this, creation, and it's very exciting to see, I think.
Yeah, and I really love just kind of like how close it all seems, like how the community seem to be always so kind of interacting with us, and like on Twitter and Reddit and things, I'm always usually talking to someone that's made something like pretty awesome.
Mm,
And I'd say that it is great to have worked through early access and to have been like I often see that people on Reddit and things when discussing early access as a concept will say, "Oh, well, look at Kerbal Space Program; it worked out well for them," and things.
Hmm.
And I think it is quite nice to see that because sometimes when you're in early access, obviously it's quite stressful environment having everyone
Hmm.
looking, but it's great that it's worked out.
No, it's awesome. And I'm assuming, like you said, you look at the Reddit posts and you see, well, all the Kerbal Space Program posts all around online quite often.
Yeah, sometimes, obviously, most of the time it's within the Kerbal Space Program subreddit or
Mhm.
forums and such. But occasionally I'll be kind of on another subreddit and we'll see something mentioned about KSP, and I'm like, whoa.
Oh,
It's just you always do get that moment.
that's awesome. And I guess for any fans, I guess as my last question, do you have anything you'd like to say to them or to the community at large? I'm sure they already know, but just in general.
Oh, I'd just love to say thanks for really all the creations, all the support, and just being a really fantastic community.
Awesome. Well, from all of us at the Academy and everyone here, thank you so much for interviewing with us. And again, congratulations on all the nominations. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you.
Awesome. And so
Great.
until next time, guys, this interview will be archived on YouTube. And once again, thank you, Ted. And until next time, we'll talk again.
All right,
All
thanks for
right.
having.